Hi, I'm Sebastian. Welcome to the Cubicle Chimps podcast, a platform where Raghu, Aditi, and I share our thoughts and views on aspects of running an organization effectively. Thank you for joining us. We look forward to your feedback and don't forget to send in your requests for future podcast topics. You can reach out to us through our social media channels, and our details are available in the show notes. We hope you enjoy this episode and show us some love by subscribing to the podcast on your favorite podcast player. Finally, please share this episode with anyone you think will find it interesting. Hi Raghu,
Hi Seb,
it's
how are you?
I'm great Raghu. How are you?
Okay, I'm very good, excited.
Yeah, I'm also really excited. It's been 2 years in the making, this podcast. We have been talking about it for a very long time, and finally we get to do it together.
Yeah, I'm excited as well. Sometimes being Joe Rogan fans, listening to his podcast for so long, I think we should have started this much earlier. But anyways, time is right. Yeah,
So, the article that you wrote is titled "Don't Suffer a Bad Boss, Instead Learn," and I found it
yeah.
extremely interesting. And it looks like the article has received quite a few likes and quite a few comments. So I'm guessing that a lot of people also found this really interesting. So I thought we could talk about this article and some of your experiences.
Sure. Very glad to share my insights and experiences with bosses. It's an important and integral part of anybody who works in an organization or with somebody, right, in a company. Be it small to be it the largest organization, I think everybody has a boss. And the experience of it and the learnings are extremely critical in their day-to-day life. Yeah, hence the reason I wrote that important article, which I thought it's important that I share my views. If it helps a lot of people who are experiencing it, I think it serves the purpose of me writing the blog.
Yeah, awesome. So,
Yeah,
unlike myself, you have had the opportunity to work under a lot of different bosses throughout your career.
yeah.
Do you have any idea how many different bosses you have worked under?
I'm good at maths, like I can do analysis of company's performance and what customers think about us and things like that. But this is a pretty tough math to crack. But yeah, to give you a ballpark number in my career, which spanned around 17 years, I would have at least seen 35 bosses. The simple math being every 6 months, 5 months, I had one boss. And like this may not be the norm when 20 years back, but this is the new norm, after 2000. This is how a lot of these companies and startups have behaved. But if you ask me, am I a big fan of it? I would say no. The only reason being stability, right? Stability actually brings a lot of benefits and creates a culture. And in the absence of stability, culture suffers, and is sometimes it's not even existent. Like if you ask a team, "What's your culture?" they may not say, or they may not know what's their culture. It's mainly because bosses keep changing. Uh, yeah, but that's a topic for another day because it needs its due respect, time, and depth. That's culture. But yeah, to answer your question, I would have at least worked under 35 to 40 bosses.
Wow, 35 to 40 bosses. To
Yeah,
be very honest, I do not envy you at all. Uh,
you shouldn't.
Yeah. So when you have had this opportunity to work
Yeah.
under 35 to 40 bosses, you must
Yes.
have many examples of a boss who has had a significant positive impact on your professional career, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Would you be able to give us some examples?
Sure. Uh, without naming, of course, bosses are the reflection of what you do in a company, right? Like most of your day starts with talking to your boss. You both planning things, and you're getting feedback. Sharing feedback and things like that. Yeah, bosses play a significant role in your professional life. In that way, if I have to name a few or their traits. I've had a boss, even though we solved a lot of office problems or the organizational problems and all the other things which comes when you work for a company, the reason why I respect him the most is because of a lot of these life lessons he left me with, right? He was genuinely interested in what I was doing in life. It could mean that he used to run half marathons and he used to be a very fit person, so he would share his experiences. Then we would talk about it. I would pick up one or two things and then I would do. Then he would be genuinely interested on how the progress is. Like then he would say, he was a big time green tea drinker and he used to talk about it. And he would listen to a podcast and he would share a few findings, all of it, right? What you do at work is work. You're good at it, you will solve the problem. But the bosses leave a great taste. Good bosses leave a great taste, and those are these things, right? They take genuine interest in your life. They really want you to do well, and they're always predictable. And one such boss, I had in a company whom I always remember when I talk about good bosses. Another good boss, I would say, which is his trait, is he would always push you, right? He always knew that you could do much better than what you're doing currently, but he had the knack of pushing you, right? He always would say that he trusted you and you would actually go on to make big things in life. And if I deliver some results, he would come back and say, Raghu, is this the result which you could finally get, or do you really think that you can push the envelope much more and bring better results? So that will get me thinking, right? He's actually not giving me a feedback, but he's actually making me to think about it, think about how I went about a project or how I went about improving a certain performance. I think that's important in a leader. Rather than just directly giving you a feedback for the sake of feedback, very specifically, it's just the man management of or the psychological impact a leader can have. I think these two leaders, have played a big role, and I've learned a lot from them, and I use that in my teams as well.
Wow.
So yeah, I've
Yeah.
been lucky to have
Yeah.
those two leaders.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So the first thing that comes to mind is the fact that out of 35 to 40 bosses, only two people come to mind, which is
yeah,
probably an indication of why you had to write that article in LinkedIn. Uh,
yeah.
but I'm sure that not all of the other 35 to 40 were bad bosses, but probably not exceptional people. But
Yeah,
having said that, I think one of the things that stands out with what you spoke about is the fact that the first boss that you referred to,
yeah,
he's somebody that you have spoken to me about many, many years ago, and he's somebody
yeah,
that you have been impacted by in a significant manner. And
yeah.
it's quite interesting that somebody could have a boss that they would talk positively about and actually talk to their friends about. And
True.
a person that is so impactful that it's not just a working relationship, it's also transcends that and makes that the person a part of your life. And yeah, that is I think a next level characteristics of a boss. But the second boss that you refer to seems to be a little bit more of a normal good boss. What would you say about this?
See, the second was interestingly, I missed a point, but I think he had the knack of understanding people. I remember still one point which he told me, which is too early for me to say this, but he always told me that I will be a CEO of a group of companies and I will be an angel investor. And the time is not very far if I do the right things, and it might happen in 10 years. Right? When I say he might sound like a normal boss, but Sir Alex Ferguson also, when we talk about, like, I really respect him as a people manager, man management. He's the best in the football history and things like that, right? He had the knack, and very few leaders have that. And he could predict it. Whether what he said at that time is true or not, at least it lingered in my mind all the time, right? And that belief is, at least right now, I've left the corporate world, but I've become a consultant. That we've started a company, and we're also consulting many companies, and we're also in the process of creating a startup and also investing in other new companies. I think what he said might become true. And if that happens, he's a great leader, isn't he? That's why I named him one of the best leaders I've had, because he puts that belief, and it's not that fake belief he puts you, right? It's not a lot of fake words he tells you which you're not, but he really understands you for what you are, and he also understands where you are at achieving your real potential. I think he is also equally rated leader, like the first one.
Great. So, two fantastic examples of how a boss can have a positive impact on your life. But
Yeah.
the article was about bad bosses. So, can you share some insights about some bad experiences you have had with a boss?
Yeah, so see, that's the elephant in the room, right? So when I say, see, don't get me wrong. Also, the listeners, they shouldn't get me wrong. Of course, when I talked about 35 bosses, I named two. But again, like many things in life, it's all a bell curve. There is the two extremes, the 10% and the other 10% who are really bad, would have made your life, in the boss aspect I'm talking about, not enjoyable while working in a company. And there are the other normal leaders where you've learned a lot of good things, but they don't stand out. That's all it is. But when I talk about 35, maybe I had 25 bosses who are good. Two are really great and who I really have taken a lot of lessons. And the remaining three, four are the ones who really, make your life really bad while working in a company. So what are the traits of a bad boss? So it's very universal, right? It's just understanding and treating a person really well when they work for a company. If you do that right, I don't think the person will be a bad boss. So what are the things which goes in for you to have a bad experience from a bad boss? Is, generally a crazy level of micromanagement, which means, what you take from micromanagement is they either don't trust in your abilities, uh, or they don't trust in you being able to deliver the results they want to, right? Another example is, did that boss always care, did the things to keep himself right and not what is right. For example, right, by the book is right, that he would say I had a review every week, right? But that may not be the right thing. You might have a review once in 2 weeks, but you can connect every 5 minutes, and you can know what the person is doing, and you could have completely taken care of what a review would serve its purpose, right? So that's important. It's not about keeping yourself right. When it comes to HR conversation, you can always refer to saying, see, I had every week I had a review. I gave him feedback. These are the mails I gave him feedback. These are the reference. That's not a good leader, right? The point is not even getting your person who reports to you to the HR conversation. That's a good leader. That's why I said, did things to keep himself right and not what is right, right? And had a very poor emotional connect. Uh, Leaders should, I believe very strongly that emotional quotient should be extremely high, because you're dealing with people who are all filled with emotions. Many types of emotions run through their day, run through their lives, run through their daily, things that they do. So you got to be very strong in your emotional connect. Otherwise, I don't think you cut to be a leader to start with, leave alone being a good leader. Then another one is, thinking of that his way is the only best way and there is no other way to do things. There is no best way, right? If you have thought, then we'll only have one set of phones, and that will be only iPhone. There are many different products in one range. It's about challenging other person's idea and executing things, and that's the best way, right? Output can be the same, but the journey can be done differently. So that's very important when you deal with people, because everybody comes from different backgrounds, different experiences. So what you think is the best way to get a result may not be a best way for others, but you should respect that and you should give them the freedom to do that. That's very important. And never was happy with the results and would always compare how differently you would have done it, right? It's never about the leader. It's never about that person. It should be about the person who did the project for you, and you should never compare. Comparison is a thief of joy, they say, and it's very important. Bosses refrain from it. but I've had all these bad experiences. And also very important, especially during these COVID times, did not respect or did not have respect for people's time. I think that goes a lot to that goes to tell a lot about a leader. Hence, these are the bad experiences I've had from bosses, and I was extremely determined not to make those mistakes when I lead a
So,
team.
yeah, so though I had a very, very short professional career, in that
Mm-hmm.
extremely short period, I had both extremes. In the first case, I had a boss who was leading me only for maybe the first 3 months of my career, but
Mm-hmm.
he was extremely dynamic, and he always made sure that communication was clear and his expectations were
Mm.
understood. And
Yeah.
also, he realized that I was a fresher. In fact, all his juniors were sort of freshers and not very experienced. And he
Mm-hmm.
took personal time out to make sure that we were well trained, and to make sure that we knew how to go about doing our job to be more effective. And
Yeah.
though it was just a short period, maybe 2 or 3 months, the impact that he had as a leader, I will always vouch for how effective he was. And
Correct. Correct.
immediately after he left, I got somebody who was diametrically opposite, who didn't really engage with me at all, didn't guide or tell me what it was that was expected of me. And whenever mistakes were made, he would blame me in front of his superiors. And whenever good things happened, he would take credit for, even if I was involved in some of the positive results that came out of it. So, yeah, I can totally relate with what you said, and also with the experiences that
Mm.
many of our listeners will probably have.
Yeah.
So, yeah,
Yeah. That's a great example what you just said, right? And and unfortunately, or the beauty of it is, you and I are not alone in these experiences. Um, yeah.
exactly. Yeah.
So everybody will relate to it, I think, whoever works in a company.
Yeah. So,
Yeah.
have you ever had a situation where you have managed to handle a bad boss and managed to overcome that situation?
100%. Being me, that is Raghu being Raghu, I generally don't quit, and I don't suggest anybody do that. Bad bosses are again like problems, right? It's you got to solve the problem. You got to really take the efforts to solve the problem. Otherwise, you wouldn't have learned anything from that experience. So, Seb, it all starts from me being the right uh, person in his team, right? One thing I can do that is go create a very negative environment, crib about a leader, and not share what the team or I think about him or his leadership skills. But that's not going to help anybody, and that's not what you want to be also as while you have a bad boss. So what I do while how to manage a bad boss, I always share open and honest feedback. So always that you have a risk of it backfiring, because uh, actually, if that can backfire in the sense that you may not take the feedback positively, or ego can play a role, or you might think how can you even share that feedback, and it might corner you and things like that. But you got to be not scared of it. You got to really share a open and honest feedback of what you feel, along with specific examples. That's extremely important. Otherwise, right, what you tell could be extremely hurtful, or it may not actually go to the point. So what I suggest is talk to a leader. He may not actually be the bad boss what you think once you have this conversation. So you can have an open and open feedback session. You can talk to him how you felt about a certain scenario, how we dealt with it, and how you would have liked it to be dealt differently, and things like that. That's the starting point, and you got to share these feedback regularly. So that's important. And I think once you deal with it, and you can wing it from there, right? You got to again see how he's going to respond to your feedback. That's important. And if he's going to actually respond to your feedback really well, then actually he's not a bad boss. It's just that he didn't know a few things, and he did things differently, and he didn't know that you would feel this way. Then the problem is solved, and a lot of leaders actually turn out to be like that and turn out to be great leaders. So that's important. But once you give this feedback and somebody's not taking it in the right spirit, and if ego plays a role, and if there is negativity because you had given open feedback, and if it's going to backfire on you, very unfortunate. But yeah, it's okay. At least you tried to change the scenario. I
Yeah,
think that's how I dealt managing bad bosses.
yeah. So you are at least taking matters into your hands and not just leaving it to fate to decide for you, right?
Yes, yes, totally, totally.
So I think we'll end with one final question.
Yeah,
So we keep using this word boss, bad boss. I would think that the right way of looking at it is, how do you transition from being a bad boss to an effective leader, right?
yeah, yeah,
So
yeah.
if you are actually a good boss, very few people would probably refer to you as boss. They would probably refer to you as leader,
True,
because
true, true.
boss itself, the word boss itself has a lot of negative connotations attached to it,
Yes,
right?
yes,
So
yes.
I'm hoping that there are these potential bosses who can transition to the leader role, listening to this conversation.
Yeah.
What would you tell them in that would help them understand their weaknesses right now, or maybe even see if they are perceived as bad bosses within their team, and move towards the effective leader place in the minds of their teammates?
Got it. See, a leader, right? Of course, bad is not, boss is not the right term to use, but it actually catches attention of people, right? But leadership or leaders are larger than life characters, and that's the way they have to perceive themselves, and they should be very proud or very passionate about that role. And leadership is everything in an organization. All the top organizations we talk about today, which has great cultures, right? Have very high concentration of great leaders. So my approach or my advice would be to for leaders is to keep it very simple, and very importantly, they have to be predictable when it comes to their style of leadership or while leading a team. Right? People understand simple leaders. Simple leaders create a very good ripple effect. The ripple effect is they communicate clearly, which translates into their team understanding what is expected of them. Once that is said, you have set a very good tone for your team to really perform, right? That's setting the stage, I would say. Then other very important qualities in a leader is transparency, clarity of thought, communication. Keep it very clear, and always put the team before yourself. That's why you're a leader. Otherwise, you'd have been a team member in the team. And also knowing your team really well and their stories, right? Because that's extremely important. A lot of us today do not give a lot of importance to inspiring leader, but I think leaders should inspire their team. That's a very important trait a leader should have, or if they don't have, they have to cultivate. In this world where we have become very too transactional with our teams, which is again dangerous, leaders have become less and less inspirational. We don't hear many of these stories, but the good old fashioned leader should be inspiration. We've seen many movies, we have seen, heard many stories where we have great examples of leaders being inspirational. Those are the ones who can actually, those leaders are the ones who can actually, create great companies, organizations, and great workplaces for people. That's about it. So, and also, right, very important. People should forgive and forget a bad performance, and that's important. Moving on is an important part of a people leader. They should not hang on to a person's bad performance and refer to it all the time, because if it's done and if the person is improved, you got to move on. Don't linger on that. Yeah, and the finally, right, very importantly, what I would say to leaders is enjoy it. It's a journey, and it's a great responsibility you have, and it's very important that you really give back to the people who made you leaders, or the organization which made you leaders.
Great, Raghu. That's
Yeah,
really nice. I think we have covered quite a bit, probably a little more than what the article itself covered. So
yep,
it's really exciting that we have started this podcast format. I'm
sure.
sure I'm sure the leaders listening, as well as the potential leaders who are going to come up through the ranks in the future days and weeks and months are also listening. And I'm sure they'll have a lot of takeaways from this conversation. Do you have any parting words?
Yeah, Seb, thank you. Thank you for the opportunity. And I think it's a great time we've started this podcast. Hope it really helps a lot of people. Final words is, there are more layers to bad leadership. If you actually are suffering from a bad leadership, don't quit. You don't get to experience it. So please, my advice and the reason for writing this blog, that is bad bosses or addressing the elephant in the room, is for you to experience it, embrace it, learn from it. Don't get affected, personally affected by it, and then move on if you think the time is right. But do the things which I told you before that, before you quit. By saying that it's time for me to quit my rant. But yeah, hope this serves the purpose of the bad boss blog, and more to come.
Great. So I'm not sure which article you're going to write next, but there's definitely one topic that's come out of this, and that's about company culture. So
Yep.
at some point in the near future, let's have a conversation about that. In the meantime, we look forward to seeing more of your articles. And if the listeners have anything specific that they'd like us to talk about, please do uh, communicate with us. I'll be sharing all our social media tags so that you can reach out to us and let us know what you'd like to hear us talk about. With that, that's all for this call, this podcast. So see you guys soon. Thanks, Raghu.
Thank you, Seb, and thank you everybody who are actually working in companies and organizations to work to make this world a better place day by day. Bye.
Bye.